بسم الله بسم الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him and we seek His assistance and we seek His forgiveness. And we seek assistance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evil of our own souls and our evil actions. Whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, no one can misguide, and whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leads astray, no one can guide. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. And I bear witness and I testify that there is no deity worthy of worship except for Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His prophet and messenger. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. أما بعد أوصي نفسي وإياكم بتقوى الله تعالى. My dear brothers and sisters, I remind myself and all of you to be aware of Allah and to be cognizant of Allah and to fear Allah and to put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first before everything in the world, and to surround yourself with the people of Allah, and to only be in the places that are pleasing to Allah, and to refrain from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like, and to be a person of Allah, to be a person of Quran, to be a person of Salah, to be a person of Siyam, to be a person of justice, to be a person of the Masjid, to be a person that is attached to Allah and what Allah loves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He commands us multiple times in His glorious, illustrious, beautiful, amazing, perfect book, the Quran, with this notion of taqwa. He commands us almost in every single surah to fear Allah and to be aware of Allah and to be cognizant of Allah. And on the day of Jum'ah, the greatest day the sun has ever come out on, the greatest day of the week, it is the greatest time to remember Allah and to remind myself and everyone of this notion of taqwa. Allah, He tells us in Surah Ali Imran after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O you who have believed, fear Allah as He is meant to be feared, and do not die except in a state of submission to Him. and do not die except a Muslim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. O you who have believed, fear Allah and let each person see what he has put forth for tomorrow. Let each person see what he has prepared for the day of judgment. Allah, he refers to the day of judgment as tomorrow in this ayah to remind you that the day of judgment is very close. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, بعثت أنا والساعة كهاتين. He said that me in the hour, I was sent forth as a prophet in the hour like this, kahatain. This is the closeness to the hour and the Prophet's prophecy. So Allah, he tells us, O you who have believed, fear Allah, be aware of Allah, be cognizant of Allah, and let each person see what he has prepared for tomorrow. Let each person see what he has put forth for the day of judgment, and fear Allah again. And fear Allah, indeed Allah is all aware of what you do. And on the last page of Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah, he reminds us again with this notion of taqwa. After أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, he says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. O you who have believed, fear Allah and say what is upright. He will guide you to righteous actions, and He will forgive you of your shortcomings. And whomsoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, for indeed he has achieved a great triumph. And whomsoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, for indeed he was successful. Success, like we say every single week, is obedience to Allah and His Messenger, because the one who is obedient to Allah and His Messenger, his outcome is Jannah. And that's the ultimate success. That is ultimate success. My dear brothers and sisters, we have now passed 200 days of the onslaught of the Israeli occupation on our brothers and sisters in Palestine. We have now passed 200 days of this devastating, catastrophic war, this oppressive war that has been taking place, and is taking place on the blessed land of Palestine, on the blessed soil of Gaza. And it's been very difficult for our brothers and sisters in Gaza specifically, and in Palestine in general, in these past 200 days and in the past 100 years. It has been very difficult in the past 70 years since the occupation has begun, but more specifically, like we said, due to this bombardment and complete annihilation, or this trying to annihilate the Gaza Strip. And in this past week, we've seen something beautiful in this country, the United States of America. We've seen something nice and comforting to the heart and the soul, and that there is an uprising in the universities around the United States. And they say it started off with Columbia University, and they are peacefully protesting, and they are protesting for justice, and they are protesting for peace and liberty and freedom for the Palestinian people and the state of Palestine. We say that this is a very beautiful thing, because we as Muslims, we are commanded to uphold justice in the Quran. We as Muslims, we should be the number one examples for the implementers of justice. So if someone comes and they jump on with us and they demonstrate with us and they protest with us, and they're non-Muslim, we embrace them and we thank them for their help, for upholding justice and speaking the truth against oppressiveness and tyranny and fakeness, because this country claims to have freedom of speech. We say freedom of speech. You go and you talk about Biden all you want. You talk about Donald Trump all you want. It's not like the countries, third world countries around the world, where you talk about the leader and the next day you go missing. Alhamdulillah, we say that America has freedom of speech. You speak what you want here and you say what you want. And we say this is the biggest lie in the history of America, because freedom of speech only comes to everything except for speaking against the oppressive state of Israel. The second you say anything against Israel, it becomes anti-Semitism, and it becomes no freedom of speech. It becomes very problematic. This is what we call hypocrisy. This is what we call ayn al-nifaq. This is the essence of hypocrisy. To claim to have something such as freedom of speech, but go against that. Because every time someone speaks up against Israel or the oppressive state of the Zionist state, it becomes no freedom of speech, and people are getting locked up. And they started to arrest the students on the campuses, on all the campuses throughout America. Like I said, the uprising started with Columbia a couple of days ago, or they say it started with Columbia, and it reached Texas and the University of Texas, and it went to Harvard and Yale and all these universities. Are standing up for the truth, and we commend the standing of truth, and we want to be people of truth and people of justice in all their actions, and we don't want to be people of hypocrisy, and we seek refuge in Allah from falling into hypocrisy and being cowards. We say we seek refuge in Allah from being cowards. We want to be brave people. In the Quran, we have a beautiful story of a beautiful prophet. That prophet is Dawood alayhi salam. And we say David and Goliath in English. We say David and Goliath. We say Dawood and Jalut. And this story is mentioned in the beautiful Quran al-Kareem and in Surah al-Baqarah. And Surah al-Baqarah was revealed before the battle of Badr. It was revealed very early off in the Madini period. The Surah Baqarah was revealed very early off in the Madini period. So after the Prophet ﷺ and his companions migrated to Medina, shortly after, the surah was revealed. Meaning that Badr has not taken place. So this story of David and Goliath has a lot of foundations for a believing people. It teaches us truth and sincerity and strength, and where strength comes from. And where strength comes from. Strength comes from iman in worship, not from numbers. Not from numbers. Allah, He says in Surah Al-Baqarah after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألم تر إلى الملأ من بني إسرائيل من بعد موسى إذ قالوا لنبي لهم ابعث لنا ملكا نقاتل في سبيل الله قال هل عصيتم إن كتب عليكم القتال ألا تقاتلوا قالوا وما لنا ألا نقاتل في سبيل الله وقد أخرجنا من ديارنا وأبنائنا فلما كتب عليهم القتال تولوا إلا قليلا منهم والله عليم بالظالمين. Allah, He gives us a story, and He starts off the story by saying, did you not see the people of Bani Israel from after Musa alayhi salam? So after the time of Musa, generations passed, the children of Israel, they called out to Allah, and they said they called out to their prophet that was there at that time. They said to their prophet, why don't you send us a king so we could fight in the way of Allah with that king? We want a king to take care of us and be strong and mighty, so we could follow him and his command and fight for the way of Allah. So the Prophet responded to them and he said, and what do you think if Allah sends you all a king, a strong mighty king, and you don't follow him after that? And they said, how would we not follow him after that? Of course we'll follow him after that, and indeed we have been kicked out of our land and we have been oppressed. And then Allah, He says, فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالُ تَوَلَّوْا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. So they claimed they were talking big, they had a big speech. Just send us, they tell their prophet of the time, send us a king so we could fight in the way of Allah because we've been oppressed, we want to fight in the way of Allah. And the prophet knows his people very well. He said, and what happens if Allah sends you a king and then you do not fight and you do not respond to the call of qital or jihad? They said, no, how will we not respond? Of course we're going to respond. We've been oppressed and we've been kicked out of our land. Then Allah sends them a king. فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالُ تُوَلَّوْا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ. Then when Allah, He prescribes upon them the fighting, then when Allah prescribes upon them fighting in the way of Allah, they all retreated and ran away as cowards, إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ, except for a bit of them. They said there was about 80,000, and after this, there was about 20,000. Then Allah, He says, and Allah, He says, and Allah is all aware of the oppressors. Yani they oppress themselves because they're cowards. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ بَعَثَ لَكُمْ طَالُوتَ مَلِكًا. And their prophet tells them of who Allah sent to them. These are the little bit of people that are left. He says, indeed Allah has sent to you Talut as a king. Allah sent this man called Talut as a king. And they responded to this by saying, قالوا أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ الْمُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. They say, how is he going to be a king over us? And we are more deserving to be kings over him, and he's a poor man. Allah did not open up on him with wealth. This shows a shallow understanding of the children of Israel, because strength in kingdom and dominion is given by Allah. قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِ الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. My dear brothers and sisters, power and izzah and pride and strength is through Allah, and Allah grants strength and power and pride and izzah to whom He wills and to whom He wants, and He strips and He takes away and He belittles whom He wills. This is a very important concept to understand. Allah is the one who grants pride and strength in kingdom and dominion, and Allah is the one who takes away dominion and takes away kingdom. And Allah is the one who belittles. So they say, how could He be a king over us? He's a poor guy. Like, he's poor as heck. We're all better off to be kings than him, because they have no understanding. And then قال إن الله اصطفاه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم والله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. The Prophet responds to them to try to teach them a lesson. He goes, Allah has chosen him over all of you. And Allah اصطفاه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم. And Allah granted him strength and power in his body. He had a physical strong body. He was the tallest of Bani Israel. And He granted him ilm, زاده بسطة في العلم والجسم. He granted him a strong physique and he granted him ilm. And ilm is what makes someone strong. Knowledge that is accompanied with taqwa. Knowledge that is infused with taqwa and belief in strong iman and worship is beneficial knowledge. So this man Talut, aka he was a pious man. That's why Allah chose him to be the leader. And that's why Allah teaches us this important concept. Knowledge that makes you strong and knowledge that brings you closer to Allah is what increases you in rank. And that's why Allah picked him. Not money. Not money. This is a very shallow understanding. Very shallow understanding. Then he Wallahu yu'ti mulkahu man yasha' wallahu wasi'an alim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He grants His dominion and Allah grants His kingdom and Allah grants power to whom He wills. And Allah is wasi'un alim. Allah is all vast and all knowing. Allah knows where to place His kingdom and His power and whom to give power to. Allah is all knowing. He reminds us in the Quran after saying this, that Allah is wasi'. His giving is vast and He's all knowledgeable. Sit down. Yeah, and then وقال لهم نبيهم إن آية ملكه أن يأتيكم التابوت فيه سكينة من ربكم وبقية مما ترك آل موسى وآل هارون تحمله الملائكة إن في ذلك لآيات لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. Then Allah, He says that their prophet, once again, he told them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to grant you all a sign, because they asked for a miracle. They said, please send us a miracle so we could believe in Him. So now these little that were left over from the 80,000, we said it was about 20,000, they go and they ask for something else. They say, Ya Allah, grant us a miracle and grant us a sign. So then the Prophet says that Allah has sent you this ayah. That the ayah of the sign of his kingdom and His dominion is that أن يأتيكم التابوت فيه سكينة من ربكم. Allah, He granted them this thing called a tabut. This tabut was a wooden box from the time of Musa and Harun alayhima as-salam, and it had some of their belongings in it. And the enemies of Bani Israel held on to it. The enemies of the children of Israel, they held on to this for generations. So Allah said that the miracle is that Allah granted this box back to them. سكينة من ربكم وبقية مما ترك آل موسى وآل هارون تحمله الملائكة. The angels, they brought this miracle, they brought this tabut, they brought this wooden box from the enemies of Bani Israel and brought it to them as a sign. And then Allah, He says, إن في ذلك لآية لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. Indeed in this miracle is a sign for you all if you had understanding and iman. Now Talut is in charge and they saw the miracle and they continue with Talut. فلما فصل طالوت بالجنود قال إن الله مبتليكم بنهر. Now Talut, he goes out with his army, those who were left with him. We said there's about 20,000 left with him. And they come out and they reach a river. They reach a river. فَمَنْ شَرِبَ مِنْهُ فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي وَمَنْ لَمْ يَطْعَمْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي. They were very thirsty, but this was a test for them. He said, whomsoever doesn't drink from the river, he passes the test. Yani you have to strive sometimes and uphold the command of the leader sometimes. Sometimes you have to obey commandments sometimes, and you have to fight your nafs sometimes, and not give in to your nafs. He said, whomsoever doesn't drink from this river, فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي. He is indeed from me. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَطْعَمْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي. And whomsoever who drinks from it is going to fail the test. And then he go إلا من اغترف غرفة بيده فشربوا منه إلا قليلا منهم. They all failed the test basically. They all drank from the river except for a bit of them. فلما جاوزه هو والذين آمنوا معه قالوا لا طاقة لنا اليوم بجالوت وجنوده قال الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقوا الله كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله والله مع الصابرين. They all failed this test except for a bit of them. They say that about 313 people were the ones who passed the test. How many people were the people of Badr? We say the people of Badr, those who fought in Badr, were 313 people. This surah was revealed a year or two before the battle of Badr took place. So Abdullah ibn Abbas, they call him the Mufassir of the Quran, the companion of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his first cousin, he says that the same amount of people that were left over with Talut were the same amount of people that fought in Badr, 313. And then when they went out and they were going to fight the army of Jalut, because they're now approaching Jalut. So it's Talut and his army. Talut and his army of 313, who used to be 80,000. So Allah continuously tested them with various tests. Allah, He says, لِيُمِيزَ اللَّهُ الْخَبِيثَ مِنَ الطَّيِّبِ. Allah, He says He wants to differentiate the impure from the tayyib, from the pure. Pure is iman and strength. وَلِيُمَحِّصُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَمْحَقَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah, He says He wants to do tamhis for those who believe. The believer has to go through tests sometimes to make him strong. It's called tamhis. Sometimes you raise your child and you tell him something and you're strict with him to make him strong. The prophets, they raise their people to make them strong. Allah only wanted the select. If there's 313 select, as opposed to 80,000 that are all fake and weak, We don't want the 80,000 fake and weak. We want the select batch. Tamhis. So that's what happened. 313 are left over with Talut. Talut is the commander of the army, and now they're going forward to fight Jalut and his army. And Jalut was a huge man, right? Goliath. And then some of them, they said, the believing, strong believers from them, as they're going and approaching this war, they said, كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله. How many times they're saying to keep each other strong and to give each other morale? How many times did a small number of people overcome a large number of people? How many times did a small number of people overcome a large number of people by the will of Allah? And indeed Allah is with those who are patient. And indeed Allah Azza wa Jal, He's with those who are patient. And then they come together, the two armies come together. Allah, He says, وَلَمَّا بَرَزُوا لِجَالُوتَ وَجُنُودِهِ قَالُوا رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْنَا صَبْرًا وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا وَانصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. They make dua. The believing group that are left, they make dua to Allah. They say, oh Allah, grant us patience and strengthen our feet and grant us victory over the oppressive disbelieving people. They make a beautiful dua. رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْنَا صَبْرًا وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا وَانصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. The second they meet in battle, they make a strong dua to Allah. They understand that only power and victory comes to Allah. And then Allah, He says, فَهَزَمُوهُمْ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُم بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضُ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. Then Allah, He says, and they defeated them by the will of Allah. Allah, He says, فَهَزَمُوهُمْ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And they were victorious over Goliath and his people. بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. By the will of Allah. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. And David killed Goliath. And Dawood killed Jalut. وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. And Allah granted David, Dawood alayhi salam, mulk and hikmah, a large kingdom and wisdom. And wisdom is the greatest gift you could be gifted by Allah. Wisdom is a gift and bounty of Allah. Dawood alayhi salam was about 12, 13 years old. He was a young boy. He was one of the young people in the army. He was one of the young people in the army of 313 in Talut's army. But he had iman and strength and he was close to Allah. So now when the two armies met, they do something called mubaraza. Before they have an all-out war, before the two armies all out and go out all together, one person goes against one person, or two people go against two people. So Dawood alayhi salam, he told Talut, I want to go out and I want to fight Jalut. Jalut was a massive individual. Goliath was humongous. He was the strongest of the disbelievers. And Talut was the strongest and largest of the believers. They say that Talut was the tallest and strongest from the believers, from Bani Israel. And he was their leader and their king. And they say that Talut came only up to the shoulders of Jalut. And Dawood was small. He wasn't as big as Goliath. But he came out with iman and he came out with sincere belief. And when you have sincere belief and iman and strength of iman, you're victorious no matter what. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He changes the course of the entire universe to grant you victory. The same way He granted the Muslims victory in Badr. And the Muslims were not expecting a war in Badr. Badr was meant to be a skirmish. And Badr ended up becoming an all-out war. And it was 313 against 1,000. And they were victorious. Allah, He sent angels. And over here, it's a small amount of people. And they say the same amount of people as Badr against a large number of people. And Goliath is their leader. Jalut is their leader. What happens? Dawood, he goes out and he fights Goliath. And he has a slingshot. They say a slingshot, a rock and a slingshot. And there's people today in the blessed land of Palestine, and they're known for having a slingshot as well, like Faris Auda, rahmatullahi alayhi, when he took his slingshot and he used his slingshot to throw rocks at the tank, the army tank of the IDF. May Allah destroy them. So Dawood alayhi salam, he went and he aimed on Goliath and he took out Goliath with his slingshot. And then Allah, He says that Dawood alayhi salam, this young boy, وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ. Dawood alayhi salam, Allah granted him kingdom after this. When he grew up, he became a king and a prophet. Dawood alayhi salam was a king and a prophet, and his kingdom was vast. And He granted him hikmah, wisdom. وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ. And He taught Dawood alayhi salam from things that we can't do and we do not know. He granted him the ability to speak to the jinn and speak to the animals, and the wind responds to him. And He granted him a large kingdom that no one ever had before, like Dawood alayhi salam. And this is all from the bounty of Allah. And then Allah, He says, تِلْكَ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ نَتْلُوهَا عَلَيْكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَإِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. Indeed, these are the signs of Allah. We relay them unto you, O Muhammad. And indeed, وَإِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. And indeed, you are a messenger of God. And indeed, you are a prophet of God. This ending to this beautiful story is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks to our blessed Prophet Muhammad. And He says that these are the signs of Allah. Because right now, he just moved to Medina and stuff is about to pop off. They're about to have 7 or 8 battles in the next 10 years. Allah wants to teach the Prophet that victory only comes through Allah and through Iman and strength. Dawood alayhi salam, what was he known for? We have a couple of ahadith about Dawood alayhi salam. What was he known for? The Prophet said the greatest of all fasts is the fast of Dawood alayhi salam. أفضل الصيام صوم داود. Dawood alayhi salam كان يفطر يوما ويصوم يوما. Dawood alayhi salam was known to fast one day and eat one day. He had a close relationship to Allah. That's why Allah raised him in status and granted him everything good. Dawood alayhi salam, the Prophet said the greatest qiyam al-layl is the qiyam of Dawood alayhi salam. We have a prayer called qiyam al-layl. The Prophet, he said the greatest of all salahs is the salah of Dawood. Dawood alayhi salam used to wake up in the last third of the night and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was very religious. اعملوا آل داود شكرا وقليلا من عبادي الشكور. Allah, he says, O family of Dawood, work and show your gratitude through your acts of worship. وَقَلِيلًا مِنْ عِبَادِيَ الشُّكُورِ. And only a small amount of my servants are truly thankful. Allah, he says in Surah Al-Saba, showing gratitude through acts of worship is what Dawood alayhi salam did with his family. Allah commanded him to do, to respond with gratitude, because Allah granted him a great kingdom and a vast kingdom. He said, I gave you a lot, respond with gratitude. They say that Dawood alayhi salam made sure that every part of his family and every member of his family was doing an act of worship throughout the day or throughout the night. He would make sure that there's some people praying qiyam if some people were sleeping and some people in the day were fasting. We ask Allah to grant us understanding, and we ask Allah to grant us hikmah and wisdom. We ask Allah to grant us patience. We ask Allah to grant our hearts iman and strength. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him and we send our peace and blessings upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I remind myself and all of you to fear Allah. The conclusion of the story is that victory comes through Allah and through Iman and strength, and it doesn't matter how many of you are in number. What matters is sincerity and strength and reliance upon Allah. And we live in a scary timing where people are all cowards. May Allah protect us from jubn. We ask Allah to protect us from being a coward. We want to be brave and we want to be on the right side of history. We want to be on the right side of history, and Islam comes to uphold justice in everything. Islam comes and it commands us to uphold justice in every part of our life. Allah, He says in Surah An-Nisa, at the end of the surah, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءِ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ إِنْ يَكُنْ غَنِيًّا أَوْ فَقِيرًا فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَى بِهِمَا فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَى أَن تَعْدِلُوا وَإِن تَلْوُوا أَوْ تُعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. Allah, He says in Surah An-Nisa, and Harvard Law School took this ayah and they posted it at the front of their library, and they said that this is the greatest verse that speaks about the upholding of justice, and it's found in the Quran in Surah An-Nisa. Allah, He says, O you who have believed. By the way, Surah An-Nisa is speaking about the weak of society and people that you could take advantage of. And at the end of the surah, Allah, He says, O you who have believed, كونوا قوامين بالقسط. Be of those people who implement justice in everything. A qawam lil qist. Qist is justice. Be of the people who uphold justice in all your affairs. And then Allah, He says, شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم. Even if it was about your own self, uphold justice even if it's against your own self. Uphold justice even if you were in the wrong. Go against your own self. And then He says, أو الوالدين والأقربين. Even if it's against your own parents or those who are closest to you. Because Islam, it doesn't matter if he's your brother. If he's your brother and he's an oppressive person, Islam doesn't care about your brother or your mother if they're oppressive. Islam cares about justice and upholding justice. If your brother is a tyrant and oppressive, you talk out against him. If your brother gets in a fight with someone and your brother was in the wrong, you say you were wrong. This is Islam, my brother. Yeah, and Allah, He tells us this. And even if it was someone close to you, and then Allah, He says, فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَى بِهِمَا فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَى أَن تَعْدِلُوا. And don't follow your desires, but be with Allah. وَأَن تَلْوُوا أَوْ تُعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. And if you're zigzag and you go left or right, Allah is all aware of what you do. If the brother standing outside could come in, there's like 50 spaces that are empty. You can walk in, brother. You can find a spot inside. You guys can walk in. I'm going to end the khutbah now. We don't want to be hypocrites because Allah, He scares us. In the same page, 4 ayahs down, after Allah speaks about implementing justice and being strong and sticking with the truth, Allah, He says, بَشِّرِ الْمُنَافِقِينَ بِأَنَّ لَهُمْ عَذَابًا أَلِيمًا. Give good news to the hypocrites. Allah, He says, let the hypocrites know that they're going to have a painful torment. And Allah, He says, give good news to them. Let them know of their great news that's coming for them. They're going to get a painful torment. And who's a hypocrite? الَّذِينَ يَتَّخِذُونَ الْكَافِرِينَ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَيَبْتَغُونَ عِنْدَهُمُ الْعِزَّةَ فَإِنَّ الْعِزَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Allah, He says, those hypocrites are the ones who take the kuffar as protectors instead of the believers. They go and they defend the kuffar. When there's a battle between kuffar and mu'mineen, they go and they defend the kuffar, or they're silent and they don't help their brothers in faith. أَيَبْتَغُونَ عِنْدَهُمُ الْعِزَّةَ فإن العزة لله جميعا. Do they think that pride and victory is with the kuffar? Pride and victory and everything good is only with Allah. And we take this as a strong lesson. We ask Allah to protect us from hypocrisy. And we ask Allah to grant us brave, strong hearts so we can speak out for the truth. And we can be with the believers no matter where they are in the world. And we ask Allah to curse any munafiq in the world and to destroy them the same way He destroys the kuffar, because they're worse than the kuffar. Because they go and they defend the kuffar over the Muslims, and this is disgusting. This is disgusting. Wallahi, we ask Allah to protect us. We ask Allah to be with our brothers and sisters in Palestine and to grant them victory over their oppressors. We ask Allah to destroy their oppressors and to destroy all those who are hypocrites and they're good with the oppressors or sleeping with the oppressors at night. We don't like the oppressors or the hypocrites that are with them. We seek refuge in Allah to be in the same sentence as them. And we ask Allah to grant strong iman. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. أن الله تعالى يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه يزدكم واستغفروه يغفر لكم وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Please turn your phones off. We make an announcement to turn your phone off. You need to put your phone on silent at least, because we make an announcement and then someone's phone goes off right after we start the salah. So please take your phone out and put it on silent and pray as if it is your last prayer. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ويل لكل همزة لمزة الذي جمع مالا وعدده يحسب أن ماله أخلده كلا لينبذن في الحطمة وما أدراك ما الحطمة نار الله الموقدة التي تطلع على الأفئدة إنها عليهم مؤصدة في عمد ممددة. الله أكبر. سمع الله من حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. الله أكبر. سمع الله من حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. تقبل الله إن شاء الله. Just if you donate clothes to the masjid, that's no problem, but there's no clothes donation to Masjid Younis. So if you want to donate clothes to the masjid for the needy, you could donate it in ICPC Patterson. Don't donate clothes here. You could donate in ICPC Patterson, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.